Hi everyone, this is Elise Warren, and if you've ever felt like the ground beneath your feet was crumbling just when you needed it most, then buckle up. Because what I'm about to share isn't just a story, it's a tidal wave of betrayal, discovery, and unbreakable resilience that reshaped my entire world. Imagine racing across oceans from a Navy deployment, only to say a heart-wrenching goodbye to your dying mother. And then, in the shadows of grief, overhearing your own father and brother whisper that you're not really part of the family. That secret? It wasn't just words, it was a bombshell that exploded my past and forced me to rebuild from the depths. Stick around, because by the end, you'll see how facing the storm head-on can lead to the calmest shores. I remember the day the call came like it was etched into the steel hull of my ship. I was Petty Officer Elise Warren, stationed aboard the USS Horizon in the vast expanse of the Pacific, far from the familiar shores of my hometown in coastal Oregon. The salt air stung my face as I stood on deck, binoculars scanning the horizon for any sign of trouble. That's the Navy life. Always vigilant, always ready. But nothing prepared me for the static crackle over the comms. Warren, report to the captain's quarters. Emergency leave approved. Your mother's condition has worsened. My hands froze on the binoculars. The world seemed to tilt as the ocean swells below matched the sudden churning in my stomach. I'd been bracing myself for this call for months, but you're never truly ready. Never. My heart plummeted like an anchor into the abyss. Mom, Evelyn Warren, had been battling a relentless illness for months, a cancer that crept in silently like fog over the bay. I'd been deployed for 8 grueling months, navigating through choppy waters and high-stakes missions, but all I could think about was getting back to her side. In the captain's quarters, Commander Hayes looked at me with that particular expression I'd seen before, the one reserved for sailors about to receive life-altering news. Your CO back at home port has arranged immediate transport, he said, sliding papers across his desk. Pack light. Warren. And Godspeed. The next 12 hours blurred into a desperate race against time. The flight home was a blur. Military transport to Hawaii, then a commercial red-eye to Portland. I sat wedged in the middle seat, still in my working uniform, too numb to change. My uniform was still crisp, boots polished to a shine, but inside, I was unraveling. The elderly woman beside me asked if I was okay. I lied and said yes, then spent the rest of the flight staring at the safety card in the seat pocket, reading the same emergency procedures over and over, anything to keep my mind from spiraling into the dark possibilities waiting for me on the ground. As the plane descended, I whispered a prayer to the stars. Please let me make it in time. Landing at dawn, I rented a car and sped down the winding coastal highway, the Pacific Ocean mocking me with its endless calm while my world spun into chaos. The early morning fog clung to the road like ghostly fingers, and I pushed the accelerator harder, hands gripping the wheel with white-knuckled determination. Every red light felt like an eternity. Every slow driver an obstacle between me and my mother. The hospital in our small town of Seaview was a modest building, perched on a cliff overlooking the waves. Ironic, given how much the sea had become my second home. I burst through the doors, flashing my ID to the nurse who recognized me from childhood visits. Her face fell when she saw me, and I knew immediately. Room 204, she said softly, her eyes filled with pity. She's been asking for you. My boots echoed down the linoleum hallway, each step a drumbeat of dread and hope intertwined. The antiseptic smell of the hospital mixed with something else, that unmistakable scent of approaching death that no amount of bleach can mask. There she was, my mother, frail and pale against the starched white sheets, hooked up to machines that beeped like distant sonar pings. Her once vibrant eyes, the color of deep ocean blue, fluttered open as I took her hand. Elise, my brave sailor, she whispered, her voice a fragile thread. I knelt beside the bed, my calloused fingers entwining with hers, feeling the warmth that was slipping away. The professional composure I'd maintained for 8 months, through storms and missions and endless watches, shattered in that moment. Tears streamed down my face as I pressed her hand to my cheek. I'm here, Mom. I made it. I'm here. We talked for hours, or what felt like hours, though time blurred in that sterile room. I shared stories from the ship, the camaraderie of my crew, the thrill of navigating through a typhoon, the quiet moments staring at the stars, wondering if she was looking at the same ones back home. I told her about Ramirez, my bunkmate who could make anyone laugh even during the grimmest drills. About the time we helped rescue a fishing vessel caught in rough seas, and how I'd thought of Dad's boat the entire time. She smiled weakly, her hand trembling. You've always been my anchor, Elise. Stronger than the tides. There was something in her eyes then, something that looked like regret, or perhaps an unspoken apology. At the time, I thought it was just the morphine, the haze of approaching death. Later, I would understand it differently. I sang her favorite hymn, Eternal Father, Strong to Save. The Navy hymn, fittingly. My voice cracking but steady, trained by years of command. The other patients and nurses in nearby rooms must have heard, but I didn't care. This was my mother's final voyage, and she deserved a proper send-off. As the first light of morning pierced the curtains, casting golden rays across her face, her breathing slowed. The machines began their ominous changes in rhythm. I love you, Mom, I said, pressing my forehead to hers. It's okay to let go. I'll be okay. I wasn't sure if that was true, but I needed her to believe it. You are, enough, Elise, she breathed, each word a labor. Always. Remember. And with a final sigh, she did. Peaceful, like a ship gliding into harbor after a long voyage. My father, Thomas Warren, stood in the corner, arms crossed, his face a mask of stoicism forged from years as a fisherman battling the unpredictable sea. No tears from him, just a nod as he drew the sheet over her. We'd never been close, Dad and I, but in that moment, I craved some acknowledgement of our shared loss. A hand on my shoulder. A word of comfort. Nothing came. My older brother, Lucas, arrived shortly after, his truck rumbling into the parking lot like thunder. He was the golden child, always had been, tall, charming, with Dad's rugged features and a life tied to the family fishing business. He strode into the room with that easy confidence he'd always possessed, the kind that came from never doubting your place in the world. We gathered awkwardly in the room, murmuring a half-hearted prayer. Lucas's hand on my shoulder felt performative, like he was checking off a box labeled, Comfort Grieving Sister. The air felt thick, suffocating, like the humidity before a storm. She loved you, you know, Lucas said quietly. Even if she didn't always show it the way you wanted. The comment struck me as odd, but grief has a way of making everything feel off-kilter. I excused myself to the hallway, needing fresh air to steady my nerves. Military training kicked in. Compartmentalize. Breathe. Assess. I leaned against the wall outside room 204, focusing on the exit sign at the end of the corridor, trying to ground myself in something solid and real. That's when I heard them. Voices drifted from the cracked door. Dad and Lucas, whispering urgently. At first, I thought they were discussing funeral arrangements. But then Lucas's words cut through my fog of grief like a blade. Did she ever know? Lucas asked, his tone laced with something I couldn't place. Guilt? Relief? A long pause. Then Dad's reply hit like a torpedo. No, and we made sure of it. Evelyn took it to her grave. It's better this way. No complications. My body went rigid. What were they talking about? Lucas's voice dropped even lower. The will. We'll handle it, Dad interrupted. She's not really one of us, Lucas. We'll handle the will quietly. She doesn't need to know. My world tilted. Not one of us? The words echoed in my skull like sonar pings bouncing off underwater caves. What secret had they buried deeper than the ocean floor? My training took over. Instead of bursting through the door demanding answers, I forced myself to breathe slowly, to move silently down the hallway. Information first. Confrontation later. That's how you survive in dangerous waters. I slipped away to the guest room in our family home, a quaint cottage overlooking the bay, clutching a framed photo of Mom from my childhood. Her arms around me, Lucas grinning beside us, Dad in the background with his fishing gear. But now, the image cracked in my mind. Who was I if not their daughter? That night, sleep evaded me like an elusive submarine. The house creaked with memories, each grown a whisper of doubt. I lay in my childhood bed, the same narrow twin with the faded ocean-themed quilt Mom had made when I was 10, and stared at the ceiling, watching shadows dance in the moonlight filtering through salt-stained windows. My mind raced through decades of memories, each one now tainted with suspicion. Growing up in Seaview, I'd always felt like the odd one out. Lucas got away with everything. Skipping school to surf, crashing the family boat during a joyride, Dad had laughed it off as boys being boys. Even dropping out of college without a word of reprimand. Me. I was held to impossible standards. Straight A's, no boys until after high school, chores done perfectly or face Dad's icy silence. Toughen up, Elise, he'd say whenever I protested the double standard. Life's not fair. Better you learn that now. But Mom. She was my lifeline. Sneaking cookies into my room after a scolding, attending every swim meet, I was on the team, dreaming of the Navy even then, encouraging me when I enlisted at 18. You're sailing toward your destiny, she'd say, her eyes sparkling. Don't look back. The Navy gave me purpose. Boot camp in Great Lakes, deployments that tested my mettle, rising through the ranks with grit and determination. But deep down, I craved Dad's approval, Lucas's easy camaraderie, the family bond that seemed just out of reach. Now, it all made sense, or rather, nothing did. Why the distance? Why the favoritism? Had they known all along what I was only now beginning to suspect? At 3 a.m., unable to bear the questions any longer, I crept downstairs for water. The house was silent except for Dad snoring from the master bedroom. In the kitchen, illuminated by the light of the refrigerator, I found Lucas sitting at the table with a beer. Couldn't sleep either? He asked. I poured my water, weighing my options. What did you and Dad mean? I asked quietly. In the hospital. About me not being one of you. His face went pale in the dim light. Elise. Don't lie to me, Lucas. I've interrogated enemy combatants with better poker faces than you right now. He took a long pull from his beer. It's not my place to tell you. Then whose place is it? Mom's dead. Dad clearly has no intention of telling me anything. So that leaves you. Talk to Dad in the morning, he said finally, standing up and leaving his half-finished beer on the table. This isn't my secret to spill. But I knew I wouldn't wait for morning. By dawn, grief and anger warred within me. I avoided them over breakfast, picking at toast while they discussed funeral plans, the guest list, the service time, what hymns to include. They talked around me, not to me, as if I were merely a spectator to my own mother's death. The obituary in the local paper stung. Evelyn Warren, beloved wife of Thomas and mother of Lucas, and daughter Elise, serving in the Navy. Parenthetical. Like an afterthought. Like a footnote to someone else's story. While they stepped out to meet the funeral director, I couldn't resist. My hands shook as I climbed the stairs to their bedroom, every creak of the old wood floor sounding like an alarm. I searched their bedroom, heart pounding like during a high-seas drill. In the bottom drawer of Dad's dresser, under faded letters and old photos of fishing trips and family gatherings where I always seemed slightly apart from the rest, I found it, a sealed envelope marked, Confidential DNA Results. Dated 28 years ago. Around my birth. My fingers fumbled with the seal. Every instinct told me that once I opened this envelope, there would be no going back. The truth would be out, and I could never unknow it. I tore it open anyway. Trembling, I unfolded the paper. The words blurred through my tears. Probability of paternity, 0%. Not his daughter. The room spun. I sat heavily on the edge of their bed, the same bed where I'd crawled in during thunderstorms as a child, seeking comfort that was always grudgingly given. Who was my real father? And why had they kept this from me for 28 years? I rummaged further, finding Mom's journal tucked behind the headboard, its leather cover worn from years of secrets. My hands shook as I opened it, flipping through pages of her elegant script. Most entries were mundane, grocery lists, thoughts about Lucas's school performance, worries about the fishing business. Then I found the earlier entries. Pages filled with confessions of a brief affair during a rough patch in their marriage, with a fellow sailor named Derek Kane, who died in a training accident at sea shortly after. She wrote, I couldn't bear to lose Thomas or the life we'd built. Elise is ours, mine and his in every way that matters. But the truth would shatter us. Thomas knows. He agreed to raise her as his own, but I see it in his eyes sometimes. The resentment, the reminder of my betrayal. I pray Elise never feels it. But I had felt it. Every single day of my childhood. A later entry from just months ago made my tears fall freely. My girl deserves to know she's wanted, always. Regret eats at me for the silence. The cancer is spreading, and soon I'll face judgment for this lie. If you're reading this, Elise, and I pray you never do, know that I loved you with every fiber of my being. You were never the mistake. The secrecy was. Tears streamed down my face, hot and unrelenting. Wanted? Then why the lies? Why let me grow up feeling like I was never enough, never truly part of the family? I heard them returning, voices carrying up the stairs. Quickly, I photographed the relevant pages on my phone and returned everything to its place. When they entered the house, I was sitting in the living room, composed, my military training serving me well. We've scheduled the funeral for Thursday, Dad announced, not meeting my eyes. The service will be at 2 p.m. Overhearing them again later in the kitchen, Lucas dismissing me as just sulking, Dad agreeing I had no real claim to Mom's estate, ignited a fire. But I kept my face neutral, my voice steady. I packed my bag calmly, announced my departure. I'm heading back to base early. I'll return for the funeral. No protests, no hugs. Just a curt nod from Dad. Safe travels. The relief in his voice was unmistakable. I didn't go straight to the airport. Instead, I wandered the rocky beaches of my youth, waves crashing like applause for my resolve. Flashbacks assaulted me, Lucas getting the new bike for his birthday while I got hand-me-downs. Dad praising his catches from the boat but criticizing my every knot-tying attempt. Mom's quiet interventions, like teaching me to read nautical charts in secret. You're a natural, Elise, she'd say. The sea calls to you. Now I understood. Derek Kane had been a sailor. I had his blood, his calling. The Navy wasn't rebellion against my family. It was destiny, encoded in my DNA. At the local library, I researched Derek Kane, my biological father. A decorated Navy veteran, lost in a helicopter mishap during exercises 29 years ago. His name on a memorial plaque in the town square, overlooked all these years by everyone, including me. I visited it, standing in the center of the small plaza I'd walked through hundreds of times. The plaque listed 17 names of local service members who died in action or training. And there he was, Lieutenant Derek Kane, U.S. Navy, 1967 to 1996. I traced the letters with my finger, claiming a heritage I'd never known. Strength from the sea, not the shore. An elderly man approached as I stood there. You knew Lieutenant Kane? He asked. I'm his daughter, I said. The words felt strange but right. The man's eyes widened. I served with Derek briefly. Good man. Best helicopter pilot I ever flew with. He was engaged to be married when he died. We all thought that was the end of his line. Apparently not, I said quietly. He told me stories of Derek Kane, his humor, his dedication, his dreams of a long Navy career and a family. My father. A man I'd never know but who'd shaped me nonetheless. The funeral was 2 days later, at the seaside chapel where Mom and Dad married. I attended in full dress whites, my armor, as Mom called it. The service was solemn, hymns echoing off wooden beams. I sat in the front pew, surrounded by Dad and Lucas and their fishing community friends, feeling more isolated than I ever had on the open ocean. When it came time for eulogies, I stood, voice steady from years of briefing rooms. Mom taught me that love isn't conditional. It's the current that carries you through storms. She believed in goodness, even when silence hid pain. To those who whispered in shadows, know this. Family isn't blood alone. It's the choices we make. I paused, eyes locking on Dad and Lucas. And sometimes, it's finding the father who gave his life for duty, even if I never met him. Lieutenant Derek Kane was a hero. He was also my biological father. And I'm proud to carry his legacy forward in my service. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Heads turned. Whispers erupted like breaking waves. Dad approached after, face thunderous. Was that necessary? I met his gaze without flinching. It was honest. Something this family lacked. "You've embarrassed us," he hissed. "No, Thomas," I said, deliberately using his first name. "You embarrassed yourselves. Mom wanted me to know. I found her journal. I found the DNA results. I found everything you tried to hide." Lucas stepped forward. "Elise, this isn't the time." "When was the time?" I demanded. "When I was 10 and wondering why you got all the love. When I was 16 and you crashed Dad's boat but I got grounded for coming home an hour late. When I enlisted, hoping it would finally make me worthy." The gathered mourners were silent now, watching our family implode in real time. "I'm sorry," Lucas said finally, and I could hear genuine regret in his voice. "I knew it was wrong. I didn't know how to fix it." "You could have treated me like your sister," I said quietly. "That would have been a start." I left copies of the DNA results and journal pages on the kitchen table at the house. A final anchor dropped. Let them deal with the whispers now. Back at base, the Navy enveloped me like a safe harbor. My crew, brothers and sisters in arms, became my true family. Ramirez found me on deck the night I returned, staring at the stars. "Welcome back, Warren," she said. "How was leave?" "Complicated," I admitted. And then, for the first time, I told someone the whole story. Holidays spent sharing mess hall feasts. Stories of deployment swapping like sea tales became my new traditions. These were people who chose to stand beside me, who earned their place in my life and I in theirs. Not through biology, but through shared sacrifice and trust. A letter arrived from Dad weeks later. "Kurt, acknowledging the journal. No regrets on my end, but your mother loved you fiercely." No apology. No explanation. Just the same stoic dismissal I'd received my entire life. The will came next. Revised after Mom's death, everything to Lucas, except Mom's antique piano, the one she played lullabies on. I claimed it, shipping it to storage near base, vowing to restore it someday. It was the only inheritance that mattered anyway. Mentoring new recruits, I shared lessons hard-won. You're enough as you are. Don't chase approval that isn't yours to earn. Young sailors with their own family complications found their way to my office, and I became the person I'd needed at their age. Restoring the piano became therapy. Sanding wood, tuning keys, fingers dancing over ivory like waves. Each repaired key was a piece of myself restored. Peace settled, not complete, but real. One weekend retreat in a seaside cabin with Ramirez, laughing over bonfires, playing new melodies on the restored piano, sharing stories without judgment, brought clarity. Family isn't a fixed port. It's the voyage you chart. The greatest victory? Healing without their permission. Standing on the deck of the USS Horizon now, months after Mom's death, I understand what she meant when she said I was her anchor. I wasn't the problem. I was the one steady point in a family built on lies. Derek Kane gave me life. Evelyn Warren gave me love. Thomas Warren gave me nothing but an example of what not to be. And Lucas? He gave me the gift of understanding that sometimes blood means nothing at all. If secrets have shadowed your story, remember, you're the captain now. Tell your truth, ride the waves, and emerge stronger. I did. I charted my own course, claimed my own legacy, and built my own family from the people who chose to stand beside me. The Navy hymn goes, "Eternal Father, strong to save, whose arm hath bound the restless wave." I used to think it was about God. Now I know it's about us, about finding the strength to save ourselves when the waves threaten to pull us under.